Hello and welcome to part 2 of our flat beading tutorial working with cabs or centers. So to start our second row, I'm going to start it the same way we started the first row by going just a millimeter or so away from our first row, like this, and this is so they're not pushed together. Like I mentioned in the last tutorial, I'm going to be working with about 9 beads here, but feel free to use as little or as many as you're comfortable with. Repeating the same steps as part 1 of the tutorial. If you haven't watched that video yet, I recommend you check it out. I'll have it linked below as well as in the top right corner. So we're just going to make sure that our beads are placed and our thread is tight, tacked down, and then between each of the beads. So it's important that you keep your tension really tight for that first step, and then you can go more light-handed when you tack. So it's important that your first row that we did with the metallic beads is nice and straight, because you're going to see any mistakes that you made in that first row rippled out into your later rows. So if you aren't happy with how it went, make sure to just take it out and redo it until you get the hang of it. Like this, and tack down. So I'm hoping that you are kind of getting the rhythm of doing this and getting the hang of it, because this is basically the process that we're going to repeat for the rest of the earring. If you have any questions about this tutorial, or you have any ideas of other tutorials you'd like me to do, please comment them below. And if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and growing my channel. So we're going to keep repeating this until we get all the way around for our row. So I've sped it up for you so you can kind of watch me doing it some more. Like this, and you can see there I was just correcting my thread. Sometimes you can get knots, so just be careful and don't go too fast. This is obviously sped up and I cannot bead anywhere near this fast. Okay, and now that we're at the end, we're going to repeat a similar process. So we're going to measure out our beads and make sure that they fit. So you can see here they fit, but it's a little bit too much, right? It's not quite sitting in place. So I'm actually going to take off my last 2 beads and I'm going to replace them with ones that are a little bit smaller. So again, the nice thing about using Czech beads is that they do have some inconsistencies, and these are really nice for flat beading, because sometimes we have a very tight spot, and if our beads were all the same size, we wouldn't be able to fill it without causing bumps or leaving any gaps. So now that I have a perfect amount, I'm just going to go through those first couple beads, tack down, and then tack between our beads again. So I'm going to repeat this a couple more times just until I'm happy with the size of my earring. Okay, and now that we've finished our row, we'll start our next one. So for this row, I want to do an alternating pattern of the matte beads and the metallic beads. So I'm just going to pour them into a little container, just a couple of each, and I find this makes it a lot easier for me to pick up the beads and work more quickly than it would be for me to go between container and container. Like that. So until I'm happy, and it looks like I've got a 1-to-1 ratio, like this. And then I can take my needle and I can pick up the beads really quickly, alternating between the 2 different colors, like that. And then our next step, I bet you know what it is. We're gonna go through, tack it down, tack between our beads, and backstitch until we get all the way around, like this. Okay, so since we're doing a pattern, this is where it can be a little bit tricky. So I'm going to grab a couple beads to try and finish this out. So you can see like that, that fits nicely, but you can see it does have a little bit of a gap. So having a little bit of a gap is going to be better than having too many beads so it doesn't lay flat. But I am going to take off these beads and try to find ones that are a little bit bigger. So I'm going to look in here and see if I can find any big ones. One good step is while you're going through and just working on your regular rows is pulling out any beads that are different sizes. So if you see any itty bitty ones or any that are bigger, just put them to the side because they'll come in handy later. There we go. So now the gap is a little bit smaller and these will fit quite nicely. So this is one reason why I like Czech beads, is I can do this more easily. If you're working with Miyuki beads, which are very consistent, you're going to have a little bit more difficulty when it comes to filling any areas that require a smaller bead because they're all so consistent. But they are really good for bead weaving. So depending on what kind of projects you're doing, you'll use the different beads for them. So now that we are all done with our last row, we are going to tie off our thread and cut it out. So now that it is all secure, we'll just turn it over. So I'm going to take my needle and put it through a couple fibers of the felt, and then I'm going to take my thread and wrap it around my needle and pull it tight to create a knot. And then we'll do that one more time just to make sure that it is secure. And once we're done with our knots, we will just snip off the excess. So that is part 2, and I will make a third part that'll show you how to do the finishing steps of this process.